Good morning. It is Monday, April 12th, and I just wanted to go ahead and give you a recap of the 2021 legislative session that ended this past Saturday at midnight. This was an extraordinarily productive session for the West Virginia Chamber of Commerce. We saw many chamber-supported bills across the finish line, and many have already been signed by the governor and are now in effect. What I wanted to do is, now that the session is over, just give you a quick recap on some of the major achievements that will benefit the employer community in West Virginia. First off, we talked a good bit about this earlier this session. Senate Bill 277 was the COVID-19 Jobs Protection Act. This was identified by many chamber members as the most important thing for them to come out of this entire session, and it is the COVID-19 liability reform law. Our friends across the country, both the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Council of State Chambers, are now pointing to West Virginia's Senate Bill 277 as the gold standard for COVID-19 liability reform. This is going to give much needed protections to our employer community to operate without fear of facing a lawsuit that could put them out of business. That law is already in effect, so we're very thankful for the legislature to pass it, the governor to sign it, but it is now in effect. We also had another major achievement that occurred just last week, and that was the passage and signing of Senate Bill 275, which creates an intermediate appellate court in West Virginia. This issue goes all the way back to the Manchin administration, when a judicial commission was put together to study our court system. That commission was chaired by none other than former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor, and it recommended the creation of an intermediate appellate court in West Virginia. Before the passage of this bill, West Virginia was the largest state by 500,000 people that did not have a form of intermediate appellate court. So this bill has created that. That court will begin operations July 1 of 2022. To start off, it'll be one court with 3 judges. However, pending the workload and going forward, future legislature may decide to reshape that court and expand it if necessary. But another great policy achievement there. The legislature also passed Senate Bill 272, which is the Employment Worker Classification Act. With the rise of the gig economy and people looking at jobs that are a little less traditional as far as going into work, sitting in an office, and so forth, this bill is going to provide flexibility for people to gain employment that may not necessarily want to be classified as an employee and instead be classified as an independent contractor. Think Uber, for example. This is just one bill that will give a lot more flexibility as we go for the gig economy. House Bill 2026 makes some pretty interesting changes. Currently, right now, for an employee, if you go to several different states, your employer is required to withhold your personal income taxes for that state, even if you're there for one day. That is the case in West Virginia. If you're an employee out of state and you come here for one day, it hasn't really been something that's been enforced, though certain states do enforce it. There is now a uniform effort to give a 30-day window for employees before they would have to go ahead and remit any income taxes to a state. That way, if you go for a work conference or something of that nature, you're not liable to have to file another W-2. House Bill 2026 contains this uniform law, and it has a reciprocity agreement in place that requires that employee's home state also would treat a West Virginia employee the same way. The bill also adopts a single sales factor, which is something that many members of the West Virginia Chamber have applauded. But that bill has been signed, completed, and will be going into effect this summer. The legislature tackled several areas of education reform. Charter schools, we now have expanded the amount of charter schools allowed in West Virginia and created another authorizing body. This was very important because prior to this, in 2019, when charter schools were first authorized, only county boards of education could authorize them. That was always known to be a bit of a problem, so this bill now creates a separate charter school authorizing body. It will still be reporting to the West Virginia Board of Education, but another good step there. The legislature's done some things to help with open enrollment to make it a little bit easier for a student to go to school in a different county if they need to. So a lot of good things there. We were disappointed that House Joint Resolution 1 did not end up getting a vote in the Senate, and that's because it was short of the necessary 2/3. Right now, any agency in West Virginia, when they pass or when they promulgate a rule, they must take that rule back to the legislature to get final approval before implementing it. The exception are rules related to education. So rules promulgated by the department via the Board of Education do not have to go back to the legislature. House Joint Resolution 1 was a constitutional amendment that would have given the voters an opportunity to say, no, we want our elected representatives to have a say in those rules. But unfortunately, they could not get the 2/3 votes necessary in the Senate, and it didn't go forward. One of the biggest wins of the night, and this was Saturday night late in the evening, was the passage of House Joint Resolution 3. West Virginia is an outlier in the way we tax tangible personal property on manufacturing, machinery, equipment, and inventory because those taxes are enshrined in our Constitution. It's a problematic tax. Everybody knows it's a problematic tax, but right now our ability to deal with it is greatly hindered. Thankfully, the legislature this year, in bipartisan fashion, strong bipartisan fashion, has approved House Joint Resolution 3, which will now go to the voters. If approved by the voters, it will give the legislature the power to begin setting these tangible personal property tax rates. That is a crucial first step in order for the legislature to begin addressing this onerous tax. That issue goes before the voters this summer. So we're going to be doing a major push to get a yes vote from the voters. We're encouraging you to talk to your employees about the benefits of this, but that was a major, major win. And I have to give special congratulations to Rebecca McPhail and the West Virginia Manufacturers Association, who has worked so hard for such a long time on this issue. But all in all, a great session of the West Virginia legislature. Several very pro-employer, pro-jobs, pro-economic growth, pro-education reform bills have passed. So we're very, very pleased with the hard work that everybody did. And another great news is we always feared the potential for a COVID-19 outbreak. That never materialized. There was only one case that we know of that occurred over at the Capitol and it was isolated. So just hats off to everybody for being safe, operating in a cautious manner so that the legislature could do the good work of the people. Going forward, one last thing to note. The personal income tax proposal did not pass the legislature. It was rejected by the House on a 0 to 100 vote this past Friday. But we do expect the issue to continue receiving a lot of attention. So the West Virginia Chamber is going to be continuing to stay in close touch with our members regarding different proposals as they arise, and also doing some analysis on the various taxes that were proposed during the session and how they would relate to other states. So again, thank you for your continued support of the West Virginia Chamber during this session. And you can also go ahead and check out the email. And if you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email at bdayton@wvchamber.com. Thank you very much and have a great week.